Welcome. You're attending a webinar presented by Xbert, the AI-powered work intelligence that safeguards and empowers your bookkeeping and accounting teams, supercharging efficiency and data quality. Today, we're discussing the topic full stack mastery. Elevate your practice with Xbert. So I'm Heather Smith. I'm the moderator for today's session. By attending today's session, you're going to gain insights into developing smart workflows to increase staff efficiency and standardized processes, the integration of recurring and ad hoc tasks within a single platform, how to have conversations with clients to keep them engaged, and we have a real world case study, the implementation into Laurus Bookkeeping, the outcomes, the challenges and the learnings that Cassandra Scott's going to share with us. So any questions that you may have, please ask them into the Q&A area. So not in the chat area. You can chitter chat in the chat area, but ask your questions in the Q&A area. Now, to start off, I recognize a lot of names there, but let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm speaking to you from the land of the Jagera people, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I'm a chartered accountant and a certified bookkeeper and a BAS agent. I've run a management accounting digital practice for close to 2 decades, and I specialize in navigating the business app ecosystem. I produce a newsletter focused on accounting apps, host the Accounting Apps podcast, and moderate the Accounting Apps community. All platforms exploring the digital ecosystem. So that's enough about me. I'd like to invite our expert guest, the brilliant Cassandra Scott, to introduce herself.
Hi, Heather. Thank you very much for having me along today. It's always a delight to come in and talk technology, and particularly talk technology with somebody that's such a huge advocate for it in our professional space as well. So I guess I'm here today with two hats on. Firstly, there's my hat as somebody who works with Xbert and their product, talking to and informing our industry and about how you can use Xbert and be smart about it, what it does for your practice. But I'm also wearing the second hat, which some days I think when we're talking about Xbert is probably one of the more important ones. And that's the hat of being a practice owner myself. And I've been in practice for 18 years. I started off probably very much the same as a number of people in the room have, as a small sole trader, way back when the world was very, very young. And my business has evolved since then. So we formed a company and got serious about the work that we were doing and the clients we were working with. Moved from, being a solo operator, trying to figure it all out and the systems all out on my own without necessarily a lot of support around me, into a practice that now has staff who all work out of their own home-based offices. And we now work with clients right around Australia, and we've actually also got overseas clients, which is just mind-blowing compared to where I was when I started 18 years ago. And I guess one of the big things about that is we've managed to harness and leverage technology in supporting our practice to become modern and adaptive to not only the business environment, but to our clients' needs, and to also open up the opportunities for us to work basically as a global business, which was fundamentally what we do. And Xbert has become, over the last probably 2 years, a tool for us that has probably given us the most profound change in the way that we've worked, more so than anything else, except the transition from desktop to cloud-based products. So I am sort of giving Xbert the cred of changing how we now operate. And it's because of our utilisation of Xbert that I was more than happy to sort of start working with them in the capacity of talking to practice owners about how it can help and support their practice. So yeah, thanks for having me along, Heather, and that's a little bit of my rationale for being here.
Awesome. What a wonderful session we have here for Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day to everyone out there. And I have got my chocolate here, and I'm very much looking forward to you unpacking how you are using Xbert in your practice. It's very exciting when you use words that has had a profound impact on you. And the biggest change since sort of moving from desktop to online.
Yeah.
So let's move along. I encourage people, drop questions in the Q&A, chitter-chatter in the chat area. Cassandra, to you, can you give me an overview of what Xbert is?
Sure can. There's a long-winded and there's a short-winded answer, but I'm going to give you the short-winded one first, and then we'll probably expand out on some of it in some of the other questions coming forward. But in simplistic terms, Xbert is AI practice management with a core focus on quality data, and that's our client data. It talks about quality process, which is what we do. It talks about quality reporting, which is reviewing and analysing the outcomes of what we've done. And then quality advice, which allows us to start to step into more strategic conversations with our clients. So I think that the main focus of all of those points is quality, and that's a fundamental core in everything that Xbert actually does. Probably the other side of that too, Heather, would be is that the central focus of what it does is actually also on the client and the client data and the relationship between the bookkeeper or the bookkeeping practice and the client. So whilst it's very client-centric and practice-centric, the quality cores sort of sit around that as well.
And I did like your use of the words strategic advisory, because as soon as we're talking about strategic advisory, we're able to charge more for that. And that's a nice place to be in, especially once we have that quality data in place.
Yeah.
So can you explain to me the different elements of Xbert? Data audit, workflow, reports and analytics, and the practice management side of it.
Yeah, there's probably four main quadrants in the Xbert product that supports all of what we talked about previously around, data process, etc. The first part is the data audit, and it's actually leveraging off of AI technology. And the way this works is you're actually connecting your client organizations, your client accounting data, and Xbert supports Xero, MYOB, and QBO connections. And it also now supports Employment Hero from a payroll perspective as well. So connecting your client data up to Xbert allows Xbert to roll out over 80 different audit and risk detection points, basically, or analytics, or experts as we call them. I actually heard somebody call it Bertie the other day. Instead of Xbert, we're talking Berties, and I'm wondering whether that term's actually going to stick. I really quite like that one. So it's connecting and it's looking at your client data in a really deep way, and in a way that we can't actually do as humans. And the data points that it's really looking at include every element of a client's data set that we as practitioners are trying to keep our heads and hands across. So everything from the GST side of things around suppliers. Is the supplier registered for GST? If they charge GST, if they're not registered for GST, if they charge GST. Are they deregistered for GST? Have they not been registered and now registered and should be charging for GST? Does the ABN number match the source documentation? And that's just a handful of them from a GST perspective. It then looks at payroll elements. Have you got the correct super rates set up? Have you got leave allocations for employees who are full-time or part-time employees? So it starts to really look at a data set in a way that would, if we tried to do it as humans, would either A, be impossible to do, or B, be an extraordinarily large amount of time to do. And I could pretty much guarantee you that we'd never be able to look as deep and as intelligently as Xbert can. The other thing about the AI audit and risk detection is it's always on. So if you've got your client's accounting file connected with Xbert, if your clients or your team are putting transactions into Xbert, Xbert is looking at those transactions, and if it meets any of the anomalies that flag through its AI audit and risk detection, you will be notified about that by the trigger of an Xbert that will give you an explanation as to, hang on a sec, this is what we found. This is the consequences of not remedying what we found. And in many instances with Xbert, there's actually an auto resolve function that allows you to say, yes, I actually agree with what Xbert's come up with here, and I agree with the solution that Xbert's proposing. I just want to hit OK and actually have Xbert auto resolve that for me. And my favorite one around those is actually around ABN numbers. So one of the things I love about Xbert is, it seems a bit nerdy and dorky, but we're all BAS agents and bookkeepers, so we're all nerdy and dorky people, is the ABN numbers, and making sure I've got an up-to-date and accurate ABN number on my client's accounting software, and rather than me having to go in and add that to a contact record, having that done with the simple press of a button, or the checking of it as well. And a lot of us will go onto the ABR regularly and check and download spreadsheets and all sorts of things. Xbert has it live. So if something in the ABR changes, Xbert will pick it up. An ABN's added in, a document's added in, Xbert's working on it for you. So that's what I really love. And that's where the AI audit and risk detection becomes the first part of everything that's been undertaken. Where we step to from AI audit and risk detection is then around workflow automation. So workflow automation is about what we're doing for our clients and when we're doing it for our clients and who's doing it for our clients and how do we do it for our clients. So this allows us to standardize our business processes. If I use a really, really common process, which is preparation and lodgement of BASs for our clients, we're able to now map out a really, really standardized process that we can go through in very, very fine detail from start to finish as to how we deliver these services to our clients. It allows me to put some estimates of times in there. So I could say on average, it might take us 5 hours a quarter to do a BAS for a client. It gives a whole heap of supporting information if required. So we've got some workflows that we've mapped out where we've linked in videos of the process actually being run. We've included URLs of relevant external resources like the ATO or Fair Work or work cover for different states. We've mapped that information in the template, so it now doesn't matter which client we're working on or which staff member is assigned to that client. We're actually all following the same sheet of music. And I guess, if we try and sort of correlate it with a musical event, if you go to something and there's a whole team of people and they're all using a different sheet of music, the noise that comes out of it is not appealing and really hard on the ears. Standardized workflows is like being all playing from the same sheet of music. You're all sort of making this beautiful noise that is a pleasure to integrate and work with or listen to. So once we've got our workflow automations set, our processes set, we can then apply a schedule to them. So that starts to talk about the frequency that we perform these services for our clients. And Xbert supports all of the frequencies that we commonly work with. There is one missing at the moment for 6 months, but they are working on building that in. But you can have these schedules run daily, weekly, fortnightly, quarterly, annually. You can have multiple schedules. Payroll is a great example where you might do payroll on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. You can have a schedule each for the Monday, the Tuesday, or the Wednesday, and you assign your clients to that schedule so that when the date ticks over for the work to be undertaken, the actual work task appears on your staff member's workboard that says, hey, staff member, this is what you need to be doing today for this client. Here's the process that you need to undertake to do that. And by the way, we've estimated that it should take you X number of hours to do. And can you actually add your time in as you're stepping through this process? So when we've got our workflow automations in, which talks about the standardization in the way that we deliver services, we also know that we've got client-specific requirements. And this is where we also leverage off the ability to add specific client notes into Xbert that provide for us focus on the client deviation. So we've all got those really special clients that, for whatever reason want to do a 3-tiered, multi-person, print this out, post it here to approve a payroll. we can actually document that in Xbert quite simply, so that anybody that is performing that that scheduled work for that client has full transparency around what the process is. Yesterday, I actually stepped one of my staff members through it's not a complex payroll, but it's some additional things that we need to do for a particular client. And the whole session was recorded and it's now been uploaded. So next month when this payroll needs to be run, I've got confidence that my staff member will be able to step into it and literally follow the bouncing ball to actually provide this payroll service to this client. The other thing that comes out of the workflow automation, because we're talking about the frequency of the automation or the frequency of the work that's being undertaken, and also the estimate of time to undertake the work, we're actually able to get some really cool visibility. And this is where we sort of start to step into the next two elements, which are reporting and analytics and practice management. So AI, audit and workflow are the two prime areas, and then the analytics and reporting actually starts to fall out of that. So what do we get in terms of reporting and analytics? We can look at data from a number of different perspectives. Do we want to analyze the data from a client perspective? Do we want to see what the volume of transactions is for a client? Do we want to see how long it's taken us to work on this client over a set period of time? Do we want to know whether staff are completing work on time and in time budgets? Do we want to know how many experts are being triggered for the clients? Are these being resolved? What's outstanding? What's the value to the client if we, or when I say value, what's the cost to the client if we don't resolve these anomalies that we find in the files? So the cool thing about Xbert is it's got all of this data coming in from multiple different sources, which allows the opportunity to report across any sort of combination of that data. And Xbert has a number of really, really cool reports already in there, and they're working hard on continuing to develop those out. When we're looking at the analytics and the reporting, we're also looking at it from two perspectives. We're looking at it from a client perspective. So give me all of the information that's very focused on a specific client, but we can also be looking at that data at a practice level. So it could be, tell me how long it's taken one particular staff member to complete work for a particular client for this particular period of time. All of that information is captured, and every practice uses information and wants to see information on different things. So I can guarantee you that there's no two bookkeeping or no two accounting practices that run exactly the same set of reports every period or every quarter or every year, depending on how you're reviewing your data. Xbert gives you the flexibility to call upon what you want when you actually need it for whatever purpose that you need it. Now you can probably see down at the bottom of the screen that we've got up at the moment that it talks about Xero Practice Manager as well. And Xbert, for those of you using Xero Practice Manager, integrates beautifully with Practice Manager at a job and a task level. And one of the challenges that we've always faced with Practice Manager is getting quality reports out of it in a really, really simple way. And again, this is where the BI and analytics reporting can actually take over some of the reporting that often you attempted to do in XPM and potentially had to do a lot of manipulation or connecting of other services into XPM to start to bring some of that reporting data out of there. So where does this all then sit in terms of practice management, which is probably the fourth area? And you can see client portal on the screen as well. So from a practice management perspective, as a practice owner, it actually gives me a really, really cool top-down view of everything that's happening in my practice. Who's doing what on this day? What's this staff member committed to? What do I need to be doing for this client? How long is it going to take me? How much time have we booked and billed? Is this a billable activity that we've undertaken for the client? So it really starts to just open up so much more information for me as a practice manager. And one of the things that Xbert is continuing to build out and develop are practice manager tools and really, really cool, even practice manager experts. So when we talked about the AI audit at the beginning, it was very much about the client focus, but there are experts being developed now that are around the practice focus as well. And that could be something as simple as, by the way, staff member A has only booked up 10% worth of time when normally they should have 90% worth of time. Now, embarrassingly, I sometimes get that one pop up on my screen, but that's okay. I deal with that and catch up with my time. But it's all of this sort of information that's just now starting to become available at our fingertips. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that's happening from a practice management perspective a little bit later in the discussion. The other thing we can leverage off of from a practice management and a client management perspective is also including clients in the process. So you can see on there we've got the client portal and client collaboration tools. And basically that allows us to bring the client into Xbert and actually engage them in the process of either undertaking work or resolving experts. So if you've got a client, for instance, who does their own bookkeeping, and then you perhaps only come in at the end of the quarter or the month to do the compliance work. But during that period, you might have experts trigger that say, hey, there's a transaction in here over $75 and there's no supporting documentation. Rather than you needing to actually action that, you can actually utilize and leverage off of Xbert to trigger a notification out to your client that says, hey, this has popped up. Because it's an immediate notification, the client is actually getting it, in real time, which means that you are more likely to get a response or the additional information that's required. So all of these things together really continue to enforce the quality data, quality process, quality reporting, and quality advice functionality that Xbert provides as an AI practice management tool. So hopefully that's provided some really, depth of understanding about what it actually does.
Thank you, Cassandra, very much for that very deep understanding and overview of those 4 areas. Now, Soraya, can I ask you to launch our poll? And if everyone could jump in and answer the poll, which is, what is your biggest pain point at the moment? And covering off the 4 areas that Cass just mentioned, give her a chance to have a breath and a glass of water. I think from my understanding, some people sit very much in one area of it, and it's really good to understand that there are these other areas to explore. And I know myself, if you reflect back on the olden days, I used to wake up in the middle of the night going, oh my goodness, I need to check this of this client. And just to have that, I don't need to worry about that because it is automatically being checked. And I imagine a lot of people, it just helps them sleep at night.
I've certainly found that, Heather, since we've started utilising it. I don't have those sort of 3 a.m. sit upright in bed, wake ups going, oh my God, I forgot to do that. Or, oh, I need to do that. Or I need to do this. I still get them occasionally, but I know when I do it, the solution is to come into Xbert. And I've often woken up in the middle of the night or been sitting on the couch or out somewhere and I've had this thought go through my brain and I just email myself saying, Xbert, write automation for blah, 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 or do this. And as soon as I do that, it's out of my head. I know I'll get to it tomorrow when I'm back at the desk and I can just sort of breathe and focus on what I need to focus on.
Absolutely. I think we're releasing our guilty secrets.
I know.
What we're doing in the middle of the night. So I'll ask Soraya to close down that poll and share with us the results. It looks like a majority of it is sitting in workflow. So biggest pain point, 56% workflow. Thank you so much for responding to that. 31% sitting at data audit, 37% sitting in practice management, and the lowest pain point is reporting and analytics, because we love our reports and analytics, and probably a lot of that information flows through automatically. So that gives us some things to think about and perhaps do some further training webinars on that area. Cassandra, what was I'm just making sure you got enough breath there.
I do.
Okay, you're back in there. What was the trigger for adding Xbert to the tech stack in your bookkeeping practice?
Well, I used to keep going to all of these conferences and events, and I'd keep bumping into these 2 dudes that kept telling me these awesome things about Xbert, and they eventually wore me down, basically, because I don't know. I probably wasn't focused on that sort of things. I thought I actually had a pretty good handle on what was happening in my practice and the way that we were working. But I bumped into Troy and Aaron, and I can't tell you which event it was, but it was over a couple of different events, and they got chatting about what they were doing and their philosophy for the bookkeeping industry, and also what their rationale for starting Xbert was. And if you haven't heard this story, I encourage you jump onto their the website. I think there's an origin story on there, but it's actually really, really cool when you hear it. And it comes from real lived experiences of having to deal with really crappy data and data that had been compromised, and also data that had been amended as well, without any sort of transparency around it. And they didn't want that happening to other businesses. And they also understand and understood strongly that bookkeepers were the keepers of client data, and in a really, really great position to influence the quality of client data. And because I'm all about quality as well, and also about the bookkeeping practice and the profession, and professionalizing it, something that provided me an opportunity to enhance what we did for our clients, with a very strategic focus on the bookkeeping work that we did for clients, really started to appeal. So that was the trigger initially for me adding Xbert into our tech stack. And when we first did that, Xbert was very, very much focused on the AI side of things and the quality data side of things for the clients. And so, cautiously, and as we do with most stuff that we're bringing in, we tested on our own data in the first instance. So I think our practice was the first organisation that we connected into Xbert, and we did it for the data quality side of things. I wanted to know, what was it like in the underlying records. And I've got to admit, some of the stuff that popped up even in my file was a little bit embarrassing. And you think about it, I think even as business owners, we can sometimes get a little bit complacent about our own data, yet we're entering it in. We know it's got to be right because, hey, we're really good at what we do. But you don't often look at it necessarily as deeply as you perhaps would with your client data, because, you're a bookkeeper, you've got to be doing it right. So some of the stuff that floated up was really interesting and almost a little bit embarrassing. And I thought, well, if I'm doing this sort of stuff and I think I'm good at what I do and I'm doing it in my own file, what's actually happening with clients who don't do this day to day, and are working solidly in their own files? So from there, we actually had a couple of clients that are very high volume transactions. So, between three, I've got one that's about 1,500, 2,000 lines, I think it is, per month for a BAS, and another one that could be 3,000 to 5,000 lines a quarter for a BAS. So really, really high volume transactions. And I know in reviewing that data by myself, it was a painful exercise. So I connected their files up with their permission, and to see what it was like. And we'd been working with these clients for a number of years as well, so I thought we had a pretty good handle. And it was actually really interesting, some of the Xbert triggers that surfaced, things like duplicate payments to suppliers. Now, in a 3,000 to 5,000 line file, it's almost going to be impossible for us doing a human review to pick that up. And it was worth about $2,000 or $3,000 to the client. And we just picked it up. We wrote to the client and said, hey, we've run an analytic over, we've identified this. And they've gone, oh, wow, that's great. We hadn't realized that. Thank you very much. Now, this is a client that has got awesome internal bookkeeping processes. But again, they're human and we're human. And what this is picking up is the stuff that we as humans don't necessarily have the opportunity to surface. So that for me was the beginning of Xbert. And over the time, we started adding more and more clients in from the analytics perspective. Ironically, we heard Xbert talking more about workflow, but I thought, wasn't really clear, didn't really, everything seemed to be focused about analytics. And then it was about 18 months ago, I went, I've got to get my crap together around workflows and scheduling. I was wanting to bring a new staff member on. I was wanting to build my team out. I was just wanting to be a little bit more hands off myself, but a lot of what I was doing was in my head. So it was going to be difficult to hand it over without spending, hours and hours developing all of these new systems. And I thought, I might have a look at Xbert here. So I had originally tasked one of my staff to look at the workflows, and they got consumed with work that they were doing. And in January last year, I think it was, I made a concerted effort to learn workflows. I figured if I'm going to do it, I'm going to have to learn it. And I jumped on a call with the gorgeous Soraya and said, right, teach me how to use this properly. And I think we were on the phone for, I don't know, maybe 2 hours. I can't quite remember. And I got off of it and I went, oh my goodness, I just had this grand epiphany. And at this point, I'd actually focused on setting aside every 1 day a week to work on my practice rather than working in my practice. So this was the Friday. I came off of the call with Soraya, and within about 30 minutes, I'd mapped out my first 10 workflows, automations, for the things that we were doing, regularly. So payroll, BAS, IAS, super. I can't even remember what the other ones were now, but they were certainly the top four, because general bookkeeping. I can't even remember now, but had those mapped out and documented, even in the most simple form, within about half an hour of being off the phone with Soraya. And that was basically how I started to jump 2 feet into Xbert and everything that it does.
Fantastic. And while you were sharing your story, we had a story shared with us. Look, as Cassandra said, try it on your own file. There is a free trial, so you can try it on your own file. And we've had a story that they stopped a client from paying a contractor's bill for $35K because his ABN was no longer registered.
Yeah.
So it very much, when you come to quality data, very much these stories pay for the Xbert subscription very, very, very quickly. I know in my case that has happened as well.
Yep.
So what was the implementation process like for you, Cassandra? You have touched on that.
Yeah.
But maybe flesh it out for us. How long did it take? How much capacity do people have to, sort of mind space do people have to put this in?
Yeah. So I think from the AI perspective, it's actually a pretty simple implementation. You basically open up an Xbert and you connect your client's accounting file in, and then see what the results of that are in terms of the experts that are actually populating, and then you make the decision about how you interact with and resolve or deal with those experts. And it's actually a pretty intuitive step through in it. It's, you've got the ability to status it, you can bulk update, you can look at it in a number of different ways. But the workflow is where I have probably, we get awesome value from the AI analytics, but the workflow has been the game changer for us as a practice. In terms of the implementation and setting it up, I probably dove in. I'm one of these people, don't tell me how to do something, let me go in and try and break it. So after I did my session with Soraya and I understood the structure around it, I dived in to try and make it work for me and understand how it was going to work for me. I was also fortunate at that stage. I was talking to the Xbert team because they were talking about integrating it with Practice Manager, and I've done a lot of work with Practice Manager. And so I had some of the Practice Manager structure in my mind about how I wanted to see things in Xbert because of a correlation between the two. So the first thing I needed to do is identify my processes and try and understand what a process was. And I actually popped together a really big wiki document in my Teams after I'd got off and was starting to jump in about what does this mean? How does this interact with something else? Where does this flow through to? Just the whole structure of the workflow process. And once I got it sort of clear in my head and I had everything in its nice little boxes, it was really, really easy to step into. So I defined my processes, which are, what do we fundamentally do for our clients at a fairly broad level? And once I had my processes in place, everything seemed to fall out of that in terms of what automations do I need. And as I said to you, I developed probably the first 10 automations, or had the first 10 in Xbert within about half an hour of coming off the call with Soraya. They were very, very simple. So, if I use BAS, preparation and lodgement, or in fact IAS preparation and lodgement as an example, I had like 3 or 4 simple subtasks: check the payroll reports, do the IAS, send it to the client for signing, get it back and lodge it. Very, very simple. If I showed you my IAS today, it's about 20 different lines, because over the time that we've been starting to utilize the workflow, we've continued to iterate and build out the subtasks on the automations, which are the individual steps that we undertake to deliver that service to our clients. So even in its simplest form, I had my automation in play, and I was then able to start and apply my schedules to it. And, you know, IAS is pretty simple. You've either got a monthly schedule or you've got a quarterly schedule. Some of you may have weekly for some of your high payroll value clients as well, but let's just talk about it in a monthly or a quarterly context. As soon as I had my IAS automation written, I was able to apply the schedules onto it for all of our clients. And I had a conversation with my staff saying, you're going to start to see this coming out. I really want you to get in and have a look at it. But this is all really, really brand new to me, and you know, to us. I'm still learning, so bear with me. And they all laugh at me because, oh, Cass has got another piece of software she's trying. That was the trigger, and we probably got the bulk of what we were doing from an implementation perspective done within 6 months. Now that sounds like quite a long time, but it was a time frame that worked for me. Some people might want to be doing it in a shorter time frame. Some people may want to be doing it in a longer time frame, but that time frame worked for me, because what I started to do, and my focus on, oh my God, how much have I got to do? Where do I start? Is what were the things that we were doing immediately? So what was the next thing that we did most immediately or most regularly for our clients? So, you know, coming in mid-January, it was an IAS for January. We were starting to talk about super. We were talking about payroll. We were talking about general bookkeeping. So I picked on the stuff that was, this is the stuff we do now regularly, recurring. Got that out of the way. The next iteration we came into, I think, was our quarterly BAS. So I started, you know, writing the BAS. The next one was, gosh, I can't even remember what it was. We looked at end of financial year a little bit more and started documenting our end of financial year processes, our process for doing STP finalizations, our process for delivering TPAR, our process for delivering work cover declarations for our clients. So we iterated the building of our automations based on the cycle of work that we were undertaking. And I'm at the point now where I'm comfortable with the automations that I have in place in terms of covering probably 95 to 98% of the work that we do for our clients. And what I'm now going through the process of doing is reviewing and finessing and, you know, making sure we've got everything covered as part of that process. So implementation, I think I have to say, with any software, I don't think you ever stop implementing. You might get to a point where you think you've got the main functions implemented, but from that point onwards, you continue to iterate, because things change within the software, and your perspective and focus on how you utilize it within your practice would change as well. So implementation done, iteration ongoing.
Yeah. And especially when software such as Xbert releases so many new updates and features as you're going along, it's constantly taking that time to be aware of them. Sort of, we move from that world where we got a disc once a year and we went for a one-day training course and updated ourselves. It's just, it is actually constantly happening, and there are updates coming out constantly. So at the start, how many people did you have on your team? How did your team respond? And how were they involved in the actual rollout? And possibly, if towards the end of that rollout, or perhaps now, how many people are on your team? Has that been impacted?
Yeah. So one of the reasons last January was I was actually in the process of engaging another staff member and wanting her to come on board, but also dreading the fact that there was going to be this whole training liability associated with it. When I knew we were heading into, you know, January, February is a busy time, catching up with all of the Christmas, New Year, BAS, everything there, super. We just land back at work after Christmas and we're smashed. That was one of my key triggers, I guess, for coming into Xbert and getting the workflows going. staff member arrived late January, early February, and the first thing I wanted her to do was actually start working on IASs. So that was the most comprehensive one. And I was able to bring her in, obviously have a chat about lots of different things that go, right, here's our process. You've got access to everything. I'd like you to step through it. We are trialing this software still. We're learning it ourselves. So talk to me about anything. She jumped in and within 2 days had knocked over all of our IASs with maybe 3 or 4 minor questions. Which meant I was able to go back into the automation and just update it with the bits of information that were missing. And this is somebody that I would probably have classified as a junior bookkeeper, so not an experienced bookkeeper and not somebody that had previously worked in practice. And we peer reviewed the work that had been undertaken, and it was flawless, absolutely flawless. So that was part of the catalyst in bringing a new staff member on and getting them to start working with the output of Xbert as quickly as possible. The other 2 staff members that I've had have been working with me for, both of them I think are well and truly over 10 years now. And, you know, we'd worked both in a remote environment and also face-to-face. So a lot of the stuff that they did was just, you've been doing it for so long, you do it by rote. But what I enforced was Xbert was going to be our platform for day-to-day management of the work that we do for our client, and they needed to engage with that and separate away from other methodologies and systems and resources that they'd perhaps been using previously. So we would start by, I would write maybe the shell of some of the automations, but because I wasn't necessarily the person that was doing it most frequently, I empowered my staff and I said, you do this, I want you to define the process and write down the steps in this process. And then what I want you to do is actually have it peer reviewed. That was an interesting exercise in its own right, because the peer review process identified that over the years there'd been a divergence between staff members in the way that things were being prepared and delivered. And it could have been something as simple as the report format or the reports that they were using, but there was this divergence. And for me, I wasn't happy knowing that our work was diverging. And the challenge I'd always had is trying to monitor and maintain that previously, and it became really, really evident once we did the peer review of process in Xbert. So that's how we engage the staff. And, you know, we have regular staff meetings and they'll often say, oh, we don't have a process now for this. And it's like, great, thanks for identifying that. Can you write that and let me know once you've written it, and I'll do the review around it. So I engaged my team very, very early on in the piece with Xbert, because I knew that if they didn't, they wouldn't engage with it. And I needed to be a bit of a hard-nosed old cow around you will be using. But I get that now they'll contact me and say, we need a process for this, we need a process for that, or I've been in and I've set up one for this, is that okay? So it's really empowered them to start and engage and update the product. And one of the big things around it too is around client notes. So as I talked about earlier, a client note is where you can specify what is unique to that client. I don't work with our clients hands-on on a day-to-day basis, so I don't know what the idiosyncrasies are. I'm adamant with my staff that they document fully everything that needs to be done for a client. And we've seen the payback on that already. You know, we've had situations where staff have been unwell for whatever reason. And because we've got that documented, somebody else is able to jump in immediately, including me, to backfill and you know, meet the deadlines. Payroll's often a common one. And as I said earlier, you know, I handed over a payroll yesterday to one of my new staff member. She's been here 12 months now, and it was all documented. So that's where we've managed to work with and engage the staff in it. There's a bit of resistance, but you know, I wore them down.
Fantastic. I love writing a workflow checklist. Yep. But what I love even more is refining and updating a workflow checklist. Yeah. And the lovely Nicole Lynch has jumped in and said, it's easy to update the workflow and then it automatically applies to all clients immediately.
Yes, did you hear that is immediately gold. And that happened with us at the beginning of the process. As I said, my checklists were 3 or 4 lines long. And as I started to develop them, they'd all deployed because the schedules are deployed out onto the staff's workboard, and they'd open it and go, oh, well, there's only 4 lines there. And then they'd open it up 2 days later, and there's suddenly now 10 lines on it. And 3 days later, there's 20 lines on it. And it's all seamless. You update the master and it rolls out automatically to any of the workflows that have already been deployed on the client, on the staff member's workboard. Yeah, so I love that. That was probably one of my biggest fears at the beginning was, oh crap, if I do this, I've got to keep updating. Updating is so simple. Yeah, it's seamless.
Some Valentine's Day love for the updates.
Yeah.
Love it. So Cassandra, a little brown birdie has told me that Xbert now has custom experts or Berties to help you be proactive rather than reactive with client advisory. Could you talk to me about this? And are there any recent or roadmap features released that the accounting and bookkeeping practices should know about?
Yeah, so the custom experts are actually still undergoing refinement at the moment, and we've been starting to help try and test these. But basically, what we're looking at with some of the customized experts is you, as the practice owner, can start to apply some parameters to client data that are important to you and/or your client. Things like trying to identify if a journal entry has been posted to the GST account as at the 30th of June is one that I'm really wanting to focus on. It could be looking at a change in profitability over a period of time for your client. So you might suddenly see that the gross profit or the net profit has changed significantly, and being notified of that without having to go into the client file is what some of these custom experts are going to be allowing us to do. It could be looking for a particular type of transaction that's being posted to an account. And it could be that you can actually jump into Xbert and just simply ask Xbert a question about the client data as well. So you're talking about what's Xbert iterating at the moment and developing. It's far deeper analytics around the AI interrogation of your client data, being able to say, tell me this in a simple sentence format rather than having to set up a formula or an algorithm to sit behind it and get the data output. The other thing that's on the roadmap at the moment, which I'm actually really, really excited about, and I've had the privilege of being able to see the working roadmap for it, is around AI capacity management. So think about it in this context. You've got Xbert, you've got all of your automations, you've got your staff assigned to the automations, you've got your schedules, you've got your estimates of time against those automations. You've also got Xbert connected up to your practice's accounting software, which has got payroll data in it that shows that an employee has availability or has a standard number of hours per fortnight or per period. It then looks at your payroll data and says, well, hang on a sec, staff member A is going to be on leave over this week, but we can see in Xbert that this staff member is actually assigned to do this work for a client. You may need to do something about it. So it's really, really starting to dive deep into practice capacity analytics, but also practice capacity management in terms of saying, hey, you might need to do something there. The other iteration that's coming is looking at more intuitive scheduling of work as well. So, you might have a project that's going to be over a 2 or 3 week period of time, and breaking it down into smaller chunks that also supports the capacity requirements of the practice and also the staff member. So they're probably the two biggest things that are currently that I'm aware of on the Xbert roadmap that are going to sort of really, again, I think, give us a fundamental shift and change in the way as practice owners we can look at our practice staff workload data. Now, this is something that, practice manager tried doing it, didn't do it well. And I know a lot of businesses will have external tools or complex worksheets to try and map this out. The beauty of this is it's going to be leveraging off of the data that you've already got. You're not going to have to be building it from scratch. So yeah, really, really cool stuff.
Can I ask you a yes or no question, Cassandra?
Sure. Yes. No.
Has Xbert, will Xbert make it easier for you to grow your team?
Yes. Absolutely.
Nope. It was yes or no.
Yes.
I don't have any time for any more.
Okay. Yes.
So, at my heart, it's Valentine's Day. At my heart, I'm a management accountant, and in the olden days, I had to sit in the bookkeeping space to ensure I had accurate data to actually provide advisory on the financial reports. When I talk about Xbert, I kind of think of it as a triangle in terms of a conversation between the client, the accountant, and the bookkeeper. How are you engaging with your clients around Xbert?
Yeah, okay. So some of our clients, I'll say don't even know we're using Xbert, but they do know we've been using Xbert because we've asked for authorization to connect their accounting files up to Xbert. But it's like a lot of things, once they've said yes, they forget about it. And that's okay because we don't need our clients to engage with Xbert in some instances because it's about what we do as a service provider to them. We've got other clients that we do want to engage with Xbert, and we've just simply had a conversation with them saying we're using this data analytics tool. By the way, when we connected it up first originally, this is what we found. And particularly one of the clients I referenced earlier that's got 3,000 to 5,000 lines a quarter. We now have experts triggering out to their bookkeeper, their internal bookkeeper, to remedy. And a lot of the experts are simple things like there is no source documentation attached, simple stuff like that, and they love it. They get in and they do what they need to do. If they've got any questions, we communicate with them through the platform. The experts trigger out to the clients without us even needing to be involved once we've set the parameters up within Xbert for it to happen. So our clients love it. And when we've had conversations with our clients about it, we focus on the quality. So it is about quality data. And, if you don't have quality data, and you need to run financial reports for whatever reason it may be, how can you be guaranteed that you're going to get the outcomes that you need from whatever the reason is for running those financial reports? So we're talking about high quality data here, and once clients understand that, it's almost a no-brainer for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's in some respects, in terms of who you're marketing to, in terms of a client, it's a client who wants quality data to make quality and better business decisions. Yep. Not all of them do. Yep. But the clients you want and the clients you should be working with are the ones who do.
Yeah, and they don't want to deal with the minutiae around it either. They just want the work to be done. And we want to be able to do that in a quality way with them. So yeah, and I'll be really transparent as well. We actually screwed up quite badly with a client probably 3 to 4 months ago, and we realised that it was a deficiency in our process that we hadn't previously picked up. It cost us a client, but what it made us do is update our processes to ensure that that never actually happened again. So we're all human, we all make mistakes. But we are now making less mistakes. And if anybody's here saying we never make mistakes, then I'm sorry, you're living in a, fantasy land. We all make mistakes, but this is about mitigating and minimizing the outcomes of that as well. So yeah, we're human.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about, and I think that's what works really well with the communities, such as the community that you have built, the Bookkeepers in Practice community, in that when we do make mistakes, a lot of people times they share them so we can actually all learn from them. The next poll question is, what factors are stopping your firm from leveraging technology? Cass and I both love technology, so we're really keen to understand what this is and what's stopping you there. If you could just take a moment to answer the question.
Just picking up, Rita has asked in the Q&A, if our letter of engagement includes the use of various software, are we still required to ask for a separate authority for Xbert? If your letter of engagement incorporates Xbert to begin with, then no, you don't. It's up to you whether or not you decide to do that again. We like to be, transparent with our clients. Certainly, one of the things that we often do with Xbert as well is use Xbert as a pre-engagement tool. And I've done a number of different webinars and sessions, so we won't go into that deeply here today. But we get a client's or a prospective client's approval to connect their accounting data into Xbert as part of our pre-engagement process, because utilising the BI and the data, or the AI data quality and the BI reporting around the data analytics unearths so much information for us, which is really, really valuable when we're starting to look at pricing work for our clients. And since we've been doing that, we've actually found that we're now pricing our work at a higher, we're doing more fixed fee work. So we're able to more flexibly fix fee work, whereas we would have stepped into hourly and then reviewed it. But we're also pricing higher as well because of it. And there's a really cool report that will compare a new client with existing clients in terms of transactional volume as well. So we won't touch on that here today, but it's there. How's our poll results going?
Love it, Cass. Yes, Soraya, if you could shut the poll down and let us know the results, that would be fantastic. Time. Okay, so the number one issue is time. Second issue is expense. Third issue is sort of clients and capacity and time are similar things there. Yeah. And it was interesting, Cass, that you kind of said it was a 6-month process and you're jumping in and jumping out probably in that time, and it's finding that capacity.
It's an easy jump in, jump out though. It's an easy 6 months. So I wouldn't have said, once you've got your structure in place, it actually becomes really easy to engage with it, because I've got it open. It opens up on my desktop every single day. It's one of the tabs that's always open. So it's easy to jump into. And, if you've got that spare 10 minutes when you're on hold to the ATO, you can jump in. 10 minutes, sorry, 3 hours. You could always jump in and be multitasking in something while you're doing that as well.
Was this the new advertising slogan? If you're on hold to the ATO?
Could well be. But hey, there's an automation for you. How do you do a payment plan for a client? What's your process for doing a payment plan for a client? So the inspiration for the different automations actually comes from all sorts of really, really weird triggers, and not just those 3 a.m. epiphanies. So yeah, thanks, Kim. Glad you corrected that time frame. Yep, absolutely.
Fabulous. So, Cassandra, what challenges did you face during the implementation and how did you overcome them?
Certainly some resistance from staff, and I knew I was going to get that. So, that's always the thing, and I was prepared for it. And basically just, I'm the practice owner, I'm the boss, you need to do this type thing. So I pulled that card out, and it's not a card I pull out very, very often with my team. I'm really lucky. So they know when I do pull it out, it's something I'm really, really serious about. How deep do I go into the automation? So how complex do I need to make the automations? And with that, I took the tack that I want somebody who doesn't not have my base of knowledge to be able to step in and follow a bouncing ball. And in 6 months' time, they may not need to reference it quite as frequently, but I want it to be a really, really good, solid framework around what we do. So just trying to get into my own head how detailed I become. And I think once I got over that in the first instance, I realised I could start simply and build the detail out moving forward. It didn't have to happen all at once. And that's probably the other thing, oh my God, I've got to have this all done for it to be effective. I didn't. I was able to get some really, really good feedback and engagement by my team with Xbert by just even having the most simplest things done in there. And I now get feedback from my team saying they've just got such clarity around the work. I also get feedback from my team saying I've done everything I need to do. What else do you need me to do? Have you got more work for me? Or they'll also say, I've done all I need to do, but I've jumped in and had a look and see if there's anything else for anybody else that I could maybe help with. So it's really, really changed some of the conversations that we have around the work that we deliver for our clients as well.
I love that they're looking and if they were me, spotting the things they like doing and identifying them and saying, oh, I'd like to jump in and do that.
Yeah.
We have a lovely comment from Matthew. Be my Valentine's expert. So
Yes.
have to get maybe our little brown birdie to make him up a shirt with that on.
Yeah.
So lot of interest in the practice insights that you're getting from experts. So maybe can you share with us a few of the practice insights that you're getting from experts?
Yeah, so probably the key one, particularly around fixed fees. So when we do our fixed fee proposals, we're often utilising an estimation of time to deliver the service to the client. Sometimes we get that really right, sometimes we get that really wrong. But the fact is we've now got data on that to support our estimates and pricing. So I think that's probably been one of the biggest perspectives I've got is, my estimates may not be everybody else's estimates. And I can see it from a client perspective or a team perspective. It gives me views from both. And I might just get Soraya to share the screen actually on this one, because I think it's really cool seeing what we can see from a client perspective and also a staff perspective. So she'll jump that screen up. But I can look at a particular staff member and see how they're tracking across the clients that they are responsible for and the work that they're undertaking.
Excellent. I just love that you're using data to quote, because I see so many people just going, oh, magical crystal ball.
Yes, I can look at, what's each staff member doing for a client and where are the roadblocks? Where are they exceeding time? Where are they not utilising the time? If they're exceeding time, have we got a problem with the client? Have we got a problem with the staff member? Have we got a problem with the person that put the estimate in there in the first place? Has there potentially been out of scope work? So here's the view here that we're looking at. Here, and this is looking at it from a staff member's perspective against all of our processes, and this shows us, how many hours have they got in committed time, how they're tracking in terms of completing tasks on time, and we want to get our work done for our clients within a timely manner before any of the deadlines that kick in, so that we don't have lots of needs for deferrals with the ATO or clients questioning where their activity statement is or anything like that. So it gives us this visibility really, really simply. We can then also look at it from a client perspective. So this is looking at it from a staff member against the processes or the work that we undertake. But this is then starting to look at the work we undertake from a particular client, because the barrier actually may not be, or the challenge may not be our staff or what we do. It could potentially be who we're doing it for. And if we've got a particular client where we're starting to see lots of red, then what's causing that issue? Is the client not playing our game? Are we having to constantly go out, bookkeeping services? Are we constantly having to go out and, request supporting documentation? Are we chasing bank statements? What's causing it? And that then gives us the opportunity to make decisions about whether or not we want to start or continue to work with those clients as well. So even at the most simplest side of things, those sorts of views around what our staff are doing and who they're doing it for and the time around it is great. And then again, as Soraya is about to bring up now, we've got some other reports that look at this in a more global perspective and different outputs. So, Soraya's 19% of her work is over estimate, but the rest's within estimate. Just all of these different analytics that, again, as I said at the beginning when we were talking about reporting, it really depends on what you want to look at and why you're looking at it. It's all there. Payroll, are we doing more payroll? Has the client's employee base increased? All of these things come into play, and we're getting information that we've never had previously at a really, really granular level across all sorts of, it's three-dimensional. It's client, it's staff, it's process. So ability to review is very, very three-dimensional.
It's just fantastic. Love it. Love it. Love it. We have had a great question, which was, how can you ensure that the workflows are followed, utilised and updated?
Yeah. So I guess the followed and utilised is probably the first part, and then the updated is the second part. So we, as I said, we have a staff meeting on a monthly basis, and Xbert is a constant agenda item. And I'm constantly in Xbert having a look at things as well. So how do we ensure it? We set the discipline within our practice. So it's a not negotiable for me. One of the things I do with some of the automations is I'll make a statement in the description saying all items must be checked off on this. And often they'll come through to me as a reviewer, and one of the things I'm doing is checking whether or not everything has been checked off. So that's something that's critical, where we know that if we screw up, then it could be quite catastrophic if all of those steps aren't followed. And Soraya's highlighting those steps at the moment. Some of them we're not quite as pedantic about. And, you know, that could be general bookkeeping, for instance. We don't need to go through in really, really fine detail about that. But we make it a constant discussion about the culture within our practice around quality. That means staff understand that workflows are followed. Xbert is not going to do that for you. No software is going to make sure your staff do that. And if you're expecting Xbert to be the silver bullet where everything is followed, it won't be, because there's humans involved in the process. You've got to set the culture and the standards within your practice around what actually happens within the software around followed and utilised. Certainly from the utilised side of time of things, my staff know that they don't get paid unless the time's booked up through Xbert, because that then moves into practice manager, which then moves into zero for pay runs. So that for us is a bit of a trigger there as well. And I review the data prior to doing payroll. In terms of updated, that's always an interesting one as well. And this is where I've empowered my team to be responsible for that. So if they see an automation that they think needs to be updated, if it's, you know, captain obvious, as I would say, they're empowered to go in and make that update. If they're not sure about it, they talk to me about it, and then we make a decision as to whether or not it needs to be updated. So again, you know, utilization of any software application within your practice isn't just because of the software. It's about the culture and the standards that you set within your team as well. So hopefully, Andrew, that's answered your question there.
Thank you so much, Cass. Now, I do have one more question for you, and I think that one has actually popped up. So there has been a question pop up. Let me ask it because I think it's still relevant, which is, what is the best report to use to pull out on the monthly, weekly time spent on each process for client billing?
Oh, Soraya, I'm going to get you to navigate to that one, because I must admit, when I jump into reports, I can never remember which report's which, and often jump into 3 or 4 reports before I find the one that's actually relevant. So weekly time spent on each process. I'd probably potentially start with the timesheet report, actually, because that will enable you to filter it down by client, and it will also enable you to filter it down by process, and it will also enable you to filter it by staff member as well. So again, you know, what exactly are you wanting to look at, and why do you want to look at it? And what are the parameters around that? So if the reports don't pull it up, sometimes the filters do. And if you're looking at the one Soraya's just surfaced now, this is actual time by a staff member for February. It's got the dates, it's got the times, and if we scroll to the right a bit, it'll also have the tasks, and also any client notes that are in there, or timesheet notes that are in there. So again, this sort of stuff can be exported out to Excel. If you're using other payroll packages, it can be time can be imported into other payroll packages. Depending on how you're billing, you may even want to utilize it for billing purposes as well. So that's probably one of the reports, but there's probably another 3 different reports that will surface that data in another way, depending on how you want to look at it and why you want to look at it. So, yeah.
So
Great
hopefully
question.
that's answered the question for you. Thank you so much, Cassandra and Soraya, for navigating that. And I'm sure you can touch base with Soraya and expert support if you want some further assistance with that. Cassandra, if you had to do it all again, what would you do differently?
Start sooner. I do say that I wish I'd had a tool like this 18 years ago when I started my practice. I know, I think one of the things when I first started my practice, I never envisaged that I would be recruiting staff to do the work for me. I always thought it was just going to be me. So I kept everything inside my head. So as a sole trader, I would love to have had a tool like this to actually get everything out of my head, because it makes it easier to bring other people into work with you. And it ensures standardization and you know, all of the stuff that used to keep me awake at night isn't doing it. As I'm not saying I don't have things keeping me awake, but it's lessened significantly. So I would have started sooner. And I wish I'd jumped onto the workflow side of Xbert probably sooner than I did. You know, going back to the beginning, I focused very, very heavily on the data quality side of things. And I wish I jumped into that, you know, much, much sooner than I had. But, you know, there's no time like the present to start. You can't sort of sit there and go, what if and should I have and all of that. I started it and I'm glad I did. So, yeah.
Come for the data quality, stay for the workflows.
Yes. And live for the practice insights.
Very good, very good. Here we are, just making up puns on the go. Now I think Soraya may have another poll for us, and she may have a final screen for us to show.
So thank you for everybody that stuck around a little bit longer than the hour. I think it's a really interesting product, and hopefully it's been really, really valuable as well. So one of the things that you can do in the first instance is actually set up a trial of Xbert. And when you set up a trial, I think it's 14 days on the trial where you can connect your clients and there's no charge for it. So even if you want to start by connecting your own practice for the data quality side of things, I would absolutely recommend doing that in the first instance, and then start exploring the workflow. So Soraya and her CX team are brilliant and understand and work with practices, and they've got a really, really good understanding of bookkeeping practices as well. So they're not just sort of sitting there selling software or demoing software. They've got the depth of knowledge in what we do on a daily basis.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Cassandra, for sharing that. Oh, we had one poll that's gone up, but I didn't see the results of it, actually. And we've got another poll that's gone up about the fast track. So if you can respond to that. Do you know the results of the first poll there, Soraya? I'm sure it's probably yes, that people did learn a lot from that.
Yeah, I didn't get any no's in there, so that was amazing.
Oh, great.
100%.
Awesome.
That's what we like. We'll take that as our net promoter score as well, Soraya, okay?
We didn't want this just to be another demo of functionality. I wanted to really, really dive into deeply the impact it's had on us as a practice. You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We've certainly had our challenges in implementing. And most of that has been, you know, the person that sits inside my head at times. Your challenges will always be your own self understanding of it. It'll be how you implement it and integrate it into your team. It'll be how you have those conversations with your clients. But what I could suggest is just have the courage to start. It is a brilliant tool, and it has really, really changed the way that we work within our practice.
Thank you so much, Cass. Someone has asked, last question, can you take a client off Xbert at any time? And I believe the answer is yes. That's not a problem.
You can. So whilst there is the best value you're going to be getting out of Xbert, and particularly moving forward with what's on the roadmap around capacity management, is having your clients' accounting organisations connected to Xbert, because the data and the analytics across your practice are going to become so much more relevant the more data that you've obviously got going into Xbert. But if for whatever reason you need to disconnect a client, they're no longer a client, they've closed their businesses down, yes, a client can be taken off of Xbert at any time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cassandra. But I would like to thank everyone who joined us today. Special thanks to our guest panelist, Cassandra Scott, everyone at Xbert, with special mention to Soraya Brown and Alex Mooney, who assisted with the development and production of this webinar today. I'd like to encourage everyone to connect with Cassandra and I on LinkedIn. Today's topic was Full Stack Mastery, Elevate Your Practice with Xbert. I'm Heather Smith and I've been your moderator for today's session. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Nicole's just actually added a last question there, which is great. You can also add a client that doesn't have accounting software to use the workflow tasks. So that's probably one thing we did overlook. And, you know, I do a lot of training work with clients, not just bookkeeping. And I've got all of those clients in there, and also my training methodologies mapped out as automations as well. So, yeah.
Fantastic. What a great piece of information there. If anyone was waiting for one last thing to learn.
Last tip.
But happy Valentine's to everyone as well. Oh, and congratulations to Xbert launching in the UK. And I'll be in the UK in a few weeks' time at their first conference stand. Very exciting, at the Festival of Accountants and Bookkeepers in Birmingham. So not like I'll be at other things, but at that one. So it's very exciting.
Fabulous.
Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Thank you. Have a great day and hope you get lots of flowers and chocolates.
Keep up to date with the modern accounting technology landscape by subscribing to the Accounting Apps podcast, the Accounting Apps newsletter, and join the conversations happening in the Accounting Apps Mastermind community. I'm your host, Heather Smith, and I'm pretty easy to find on all social media platforms. I look forward to connecting with you.